The following conversations took place at the 2020 Urban Farm Academy Invitational in Dallas, Texas. Hey everybody, my name is Nick, and I'm here with the same group of people that we're usually with, except for Josh Montgomery, who we're going to hear from in a minute. But I think the question that I want to cover the most is, for a lot of people that just start a business, there's this notion of, if I get to X and whatever that arbitrary X is going to be in the beginning, then everything's going to be fine. That's the amount of runway that people think that they need, is that first initial jolt. But I'm sitting here with four people that have scaled up businesses or have been around when businesses have scaled. So if we're going to look at the end goal of what happens after the fact of when you make it and some of the different trials and tribulations and things that you've seen, that's what I want to discuss now. That way, whenever people do make that fake number, then they're ready for the next few rounds. It's not just run one runway, it's multiple runways. So we're just going to go around the room and talk about where you guys are at right now and kind of where you first noticed that, oh, this is not just a finite goal. It's something that has to continue and go on and on and on. So, Brandon, to my left, we'll just start with you. Obviously, Bootstrap Farmer was something that was started from your own frustration on your farm about how shoddy some farm equipment can be. And we're basically all sitting in here right now because of this that you've built. So why don't you go through some of those phases when you first emptied that truck by yourself to last week? We unloaded 5 trucks. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to go in between there.
Yeah. Well, there's a small period for idealistic thinking when you're like, well, in 5 years we're going to do this and it's going to be all these things. And then you got to quickly forget about that because you got to do what's important today. And every day you got to realize that who you are tomorrow is going to be the scaled up version of who you are today. And what worked yesterday isn't going to work tomorrow, because what you did yesterday is a different size company or the company that you used to have. So I guess the biggest thing is just knowing that as you build, like for me, it was like the first real business that I built. So you start out as one person and you completely evolve and keep evolving into something new. And, a couple of years in, we've sort of met the goals that I set out a few years ago, but I'm also kind of a completely different person with a completely different role. And just knowing that that's my job to do that, and just to keep hiring myself out of a job is what I've come to realize that I need to do.
Do you find that, it's not only you that changed, but the product has changed, the procedure has changed, and in a large degree, the market itself has changed?
Mm-hmm. Well, the product life cycle is really short these days, and just knowing how things move so quickly with technology. We came out with the heavy-duty tray, I guess it's almost 4 years ago now, and people still like it, but I also realized that we can't just sit on that forever. We're always putting out new stuff because things move quickly, and if you want to last and you want to remain in people's minds, that's just the expectation. So this at a time, 2015, 2016, when e-commerce really became mature, where you had so many tools that maybe older legacy companies weren't really caught up with because they're just used to doing it their way. Now we come in and start doing it our way with all these new tools. We just felt like we had a lot more at our disposal. We could be a lot more flexible. So I just think the whole mindset and this like new generation of business, this online e-commerce is just allowed for so much more. And it requires, I think, a different thinking that was required 20 years ago. So there's just a big advantage to coming into this with a fresh mindset. And then, the ability to go on YouTube and see people like Seth Godin or anybody that can teach you so much. There's just so much information available. You could really kind of outwork a lot of people and catch up really fast because the information is there. And if you're willing to put in the work and you can stay focused and you have goals, then it's just a matter of doing it. And that's sort of the easy part.
Quick question for Brandon. You said continually hiring yourself out of a job. Can you expound on that?
So I actually don't really think that I'm good at much, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I know the one thing I think I am good at is kind of creating a vision in my head, knowing and, talking to people like you, knowing what the market wants, knowing where it's going. But like, I'm not good at like actually building the infrastructure to make that happen. So, I'm happy to buy, or to bring in people that are way more talented than me. So there's just like no ego involved in like my insecurity. Like, I'm the owner. What do I care? I want everyone to be better than me because I need this person to build this system. I need this person, like the people on our customer service, to be amazing. So, but I did everything at the beginning. I built the spreadsheets. I did the product development. Like, I did everything, but that was a small company, and I can stay a small company doing it all myself. But if I want to have a big company, I need the best to run all of those things that I was doing a very half-assed job. But that's what you got to do at the beginning, and you got to be willing to push through all of those things, and not only to push through those things, but to do them yourself. You then understand what you need to find. Mm-hmm. So like, I did very little, like web design. I do a little web design, and as we scale up, I know what I'm looking for in a good web designer now because I did it myself. Mm-hmm. And that you can just apply that to every business line. So there's an advantage to doing it for a little while, but you got to hand that off as quick as you can. And you just got to believe in the process that when you hand it off, you're doing your company a favor, because now, like, I can now focus on the next step and the next step. So, everyone else in the company is operating from a today to 3 month standpoint, and I'm like always operating in the 3 to 18 month. So I've given myself that freedom to do that, and I think that's just worked out well because of also everyone in Bootstrap is like, I wouldn't trade anybody for anything. So we're just lucky to have that.
So if somebody was brand new listening to this, what are some of the things that you would immediately ask them to hand off to somebody else? Like, my go-to would be like a lawyer and CPA. What was some of your first hires?
The things you hate doing the most, because that's what saps your energy. I mean, I hate finances. I used to work in corporate finance, and when I left for good. Like, I checked out mentally, and I said I'll never do that again. So thank God my brother's still really good at it and still enjoys it. So I can just have the freedom to focus on everything, because that last 10%, like, if you, let's say you've cleared your plate for the day and you don't have anything going on, but like your girlfriend's pissed off at you. Like, you're not, that last 10% of like mental clarity is really the difference between a good company and a great company. So I'm just really fierce about, keeping my plate clear, not doing things I don't want to do. And that's the benefit of owning a business. You don't have to. So, but it's also a benefit because I can focus on what I think I'm best at, which is, gathering talent and just creating a vision for people. So that's what I'm good at. I know what I'm good at. And maybe it's sales, maybe it's something different for everybody. And you can grow a company with like a singular skill set, and it could be programming. Like, you could be the best programmer in your company and have a CEO that's not you, but you still own the company. So I think just identify what you're best at and lean into that as much as you can.
Just to kind of follow on to that, I think one of the best things that a good leader can do is actually realize, number one, the things you don't really want to do, but the things that there are far better people out there for them, and not letting your ego get in the way of giving those things up, and trusting that you're hiring people that are far better than you at those things is going to create a culture within your company that says, yes, they're the boss, but at the same time, they trust me because they know that I have the skill set. So people are willing to innovate. They're willing to take more risks because you've handed that full responsibility over to somebody else, knowing full well that they're likely more capable at it than you are. I think that's the big difference between how a company stays really small and how companies then scale to, great sizes, because they have leadership that realizes that you should be hiring people that are far smarter than you at really anything within the company. Mm-hmm. If you think that you're going to be the smartest person in the room at all times, you're going to stifle your company's growth tremendously.
And I also, I think about it as having multiple businesses within the same business. Like there's operations, there's, logistics, there's, I feel like everyone in the company owns their part of the business. And I don't really have to check in so much because they're great and I know that they're handling it. If they have issues, we talk. And you really have to find the right people. And that's the thing. That's why scale doesn't happen overnight, because it's taken us all a while to find really good people. And you gotta be really good at either hiring and firing, or just be dedicated to finding the person. Like when I found Nick, I knew, and I went home and I told my brothers, we need this guy. This is
a drive back from New York.
I was doing videos or paying people through Upwork, and it was bad, man. And we also went through a bunch of people that were okay, they would do the job, but they weren't obsessed. We were obsessed. Mm-hmm. And so you gotta find someone that's obsessed with that and give them the freedom and share the vision. Because once you have that, he knows what to do. He asked my feedback on some things, but he knows what to do.
But at the same time, I think this whole time we've been together, you've allowed me to grow as well. I was never satisfied. I mean, today I'm pissed off because some of the mics, but so we're always trying to push it. And you've been really good with everybody to allow that personal growth within each of us without making us feel stressed or worried about anything. It's I feel like I still have the same amount of ownership now than I did from day one. And it's not any more or any less. The stakes are certainly higher, but you've just, you've facilitated something within the company that allows us to grow without a lot of pressure. And I think that's where true growth comes from.
We're all figuring this out.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I can't pretend, how arrogant would I be to pretend to know anything? I mean, I came from corporate finance. What do I know? It's we're all learning together. Mm-hmm. And that's why we build a network, because I need you guys. We're learning together and helping each other. And that's sort of the hack that we've all, built here. So this is part of my strategy to help me build a company too, because I get access to all of your brains and you get access to mine. And that's what's great about coming together and doing this thing once a year. It's going to be helpful for us all, and it has been.
So I think we're really fortunate in this conversation in particular to have Josh here. And I'm not going to butcher the details. I'm kind of going to let you have a little bit extra time to tell this story. But you're with Profound Foods and Profound Marker Farms right now. And before that, you actually were with a company, an agricultural company, as they scaled from pretty small business to something pretty significant. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background there and then what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Josh Montgomery. Before I worked with Amanda and Jeff at Profound Foods, I worked at a company called Nature Nate's Honey Company, formerly North Dallas Honey Company. And I was with them for, 8 years. And so during that time, I saw them grow from $107,000 a year to $60 million over the course of 8 years, which was really an incredible experience, because I knew the owner personally. Actually mowed his yard, believe it or not, and that's how I got connected with him. And so I got to see what it was like for a leader to do that, and to do a lot of the things that Brandon just talked about. Was and that's what I've come to learn in my limited years in business is, painting a vision and inspiring other people around that vision and uniting people around that vision is really everything. Because if you're somebody that gives people the freedom to fail and also to learn and to grow, and all around, sure, you'll have a line and you'll have low points on that line, but overall the trend's going to be up, right? And everybody's learning together to just grow a business. And so, yeah.
Do you feel on a scale of that size, that's just sometimes for some of us, $60 million is a significant amount. What's it like to come on with somebody so early on and see them and their progression, similar to what we just talked about? There's always this natural progression that happens whenever a company is growing by leaps and bounds like that. But how did he stay grounded? How did he stay committed to his early visions, committed to you as somebody that was working for and with him, just without him being here, I kind of wish he was here so we could ping his brain a little bit. But did he go through highs and lows just like anybody else would, and what we've all certainly gone through? And what was that outside perspective of watching him and his growth? Yeah,
I would love for him to be here, and he probably would love to be here if I had to ask him. Now that I'm thinking about it, but
we all have these great ideas after the fact, right?
Yeah, maybe next year. Nathan, it's funny, man, because it's like whenever I come over, I go, because I'm still friends with him and his family, and whenever I go hang out, and I started working in the yard, right? I was working on his property, and I'll come over, and he is somebody who leads by example, which is really incredible. And even in something as simple as yard work, I'll go to his house now, and there'll be a couple guys out there, mowing the yard. And instead of just sitting there sipping his tea, watching them mow, he's out there, doing stuff with them. And it's really inspirational because you go over and you can feel the energy of that positivity and that dedication, through that. These guys are working, they're just doing lawn care at somebody's house, but they're doing lawn care at somebody's house who, is humble enough to, work with them and have that experience. I don't know. It's really unique. So I just kind of saw that throughout the company, anywhere. Nathan is not above anybody. He'll work the line, in the bottling room. He'll get in there and he'll do it. And, and he'll make everybody in there smile. It's just that positivity, that energy. And just, you ask about staying grounded. It's really fascinating to me looking back on it. Nathan's a very spiritual guy. He's very religious and super big on his Christian faith, which is a big part of his story. But he definitely had highs and lows throughout that period. But I never realized, because I was quite a bit younger, how he could have flaunted it. You know what I mean? Things that he could have done that he didn't do because, of his faith, but then also because, he understood the importance of, top-down company culture. And he understood the importance of leading by example, but then also, the only way to have that culture is to make everybody, be valued and be in a place where they can, come together and have a really good time and feel important. And so, we would have Christmas parties that were really fun, but they were never, super over the top. And so, I don't know. I just think that was a huge part of the overall growth of the company, was the culture that he was able to create by making people feel valued and coming alongside them and working with them and not just delegating and telling them what to do and beating them down with work,
So really similar to what I asked you to describe of him, I want to know of you as you were seeing this example and as you were seeing a company go from however many boxes a day to now however many trucks or pallets a day, what skills did you walk away from that position with? You started kind of like me, you're out in the yard mowing and then here we are. So if you could pick one skill that you brought with you to Profound Foods from that you didn't think you would have got otherwise, and it may be a mindset thing or a perspective thing, but what'd you bring out of that?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is just flexibility and being able to roll with the punches and staying positive. It's really easy to, have an issue that just seems to keep coming up and you can get really frustrated and burn out on that issue and never really solve it. But if you remain positive and flexible, you can, at the end of the day, be okay, that didn't work. I failed there. But how can I do it differently this time? And having that resilience to be yeah, I keep failing at this, but eventually we're going to hammer it out. And so,
I'm on pins and needles here. So I want to dig into that statement a little bit further. I want to get a little dirty. So we everybody in this room knows that if you're working for yourself or you're running a company, the screw ups that you have seem to keep coming back. They surface multiple times, and you're aware of the problem and you want to fix them overnight, but sometimes it takes weeks and months and different iterations. It's ridiculous. Give us a real specific example of something that in hindsight, it's it was so simple to fix, but maybe it took a while.
Okay, I can give you an example, and it's an Amazon-related example.
Oh, no shit!
Because we all
imagine that
we all love Amazon, but it, and I say this, and like, I've only been in business for a short time, but like, it was amazing to me at Nature Nate's across all departments, the importance in an organization. I mean, I think above all, like, your overall vision is probably the most important thing that you have inside of an organization, right? But second to that, like, I don't even know if it's second, but also very important is just communication and organization. And like, no matter how small of a business you're running and no matter how big of a business you're running, like, those things just keep coming up is just incredibly important. If you can't communicate properly with, your coworkers, and you can't delegate properly, then things don't get done. They get really confused, right?
It's not like people don't want to do the right thing.
Right.
It is that, what he says to do, whether that's a square in a round hole or vice versa, and I'm seeing an oval in a hexagon hole. I mean, that's so simple, but it happens. So
right.
Was it a lot of people try to fix this with technology and apps kind of based communication, but when you boil it down, how simple could it be to just emote a message that from what he's thinking to what you need to know?
I mean, I think that it's just consistency, right? So like, whether or not it's like for Nathan, I feel like the thing that he was most consistent about was just showing up. Because when you're running a company that big, like, you don't have to be there every day, right? Even your execs don't have to be there every day. But it's so important to be consistent and to be there and to have those weekly meetings, that are happening every week. Like at Profound, we have our, our weekly Monday meeting. And just that consistency is so helpful because, like, Amanda, she's not really working at the farm all the time, right? And so she's mostly working remote. And so for her to be able to come in and just understand exactly where we're at and everybody get on the same page, I just think that's really, really important. So.
Cool.
Is that?
Yeah. No, we're going to circle back. So, Ryan, you're going to be next. So we've recently had a longer conversation about some of the changes that your company's going through now. You're going through a big scale up, and how basically the needs of your clients, you're not able to grow everything that you can sell at this point. But that's the need for the expansion. So you're still finding opportunities to learn how to run now what is a different version of your old business. So what are some of the things that are challenges at this point that maybe a couple of years ago, as you did the final build out, you're like, oh, now we're set, and you really hadn't even started resetting. So
yeah, I mean, I think there was always a vision of this was kind of the phase 1.5, phase 2, if you will, but there was always something after this. I think the thing that you can't really prepare for is actually when you start looking at what does that scale actually look like? What size do you actually want to be? And you may have something in your mind, but then the experience of the initial growth actually tells you that was completely incorrect. And it may happen at a completely different pace that you actually think it's going to happen. And that's something that we have struggled a little bit with, is that sometimes you have these massive jumps in customer demand, new customers coming on board. And it's not like we can just have the production line work overtime or, run.
You can't make more widgets
days
tomorrow.
Correct. And so it's such a long process to actually scale up in this kind of industry. And once we get to the point where we can no longer expand within our current space, there's not only an enormous capital cost to build out a brand new space, make sure it's clean, it's sanitary, all of the lighting's right, all of your HVAC's right. But also, once you start building out that space, then you have to turn on the spigot of new customers again and increasing additional demand again.
Because if you land one big fish, that bubble could burst tomorrow.
All of a sudden. Yeah. And then you only get a very short period of time to prove yourself with a new customer. And if you can't deliver within that period of time, they're not going to just wait around forever for you. And so you need to be able to capture that energy from the customer really early on, and then be able to deliver what they want. And a lot of customers will understand if there's a new product or they make a menu change and you explain to them, hey, I just can't supply that amount right now from you. But that better not happen every single time. Because if every single time they come to you with something like that, all of a sudden you're no longer a convenient option for them. You're more difficult to work with.
And that's also an educational opportunity for you from year to year. Because I imagine the people that's been with you 3 or 4 years, they understand, okay, we're doing a menu change, we're doing a seasonal change. How I need to call Ryan 8 weeks, 9, 12 weeks ahead of time, especially if I want something super wonky.
Well, and that's a brand new issue for them. They're not used to having to do that. They're used to adapting to when things are available on the market rather than being the ones that drive the demand so that those will be available in 2 months, in 3 months. So it's a complete flip, you know? And so we're having to tell them, we understand that you're just used to be like taking, the distributors list just came out for what's going to be available in 2 weeks.
It's like they're blindly creating a menu in some or doing it in real time.
What's available in real time versus now we're telling them, no, we're giving you the ability to actually take part in deciding what's going to be available in 2 months. Yeah. And they're just not used to that. That's a complete paradigm shift for them. That's going to take a long time for them to adjust to because they embraced seasonality. And that's what's now pulling people in the door. You know, we're a seasonal restaurant. We change our menus 4 times a year. Some of these restaurants change their menus every month. But now we're saying you can still do that because the vast majority of the base of crops that are available out there right now, you know, root vegetable season in the fall, things like that, those aren't going to change all that much because you're talking about an entire industry shift there. But at the same time, you can flavor those dishes differently. Mm-hmm. You can garnish those different dishes differently. You can actually take and make a dish look completely different, regardless of what what maybe the foundational ingredient is to that dish. And that's something that they haven't been used to. They've been used to, I can get these ingredients for this amount of time. And so that's when they're going to be on my menu. And we're saying, well, yeah, you can get them during that amount of time, but you can also get them the rest of the year. And we can plan with you. Engage with us in your planning process. It doesn't have to be just one-sided where we plan where we're going to grow and then you hopefully want it and buy it once it's ready. Now we're saying, let's engage, let's have this conversation. When you talk about scaling that process, all of a sudden it gets far more complex because now you're dealing with a lot more customers. They're going to want different things. The more you engage with them and the more you still have that touch, even at scale, the more you can help to steer things in a certain way. You know what those base ingredients are still going to be. So there's certain flavor profiles that just fit the seasons. So what are the complementary flavors that you can grow? What are the complementary accoutrements that you can help them, you know, work that plate to make it Instagram worthy? I mean, at the end of the day, the chefs that we work with, you eat with your eyes first, and then you taste it. So when that comes out, that look is important, and they do focus on the colors based on the seasons. So you have to think about all those things, and so we're asking them to engage with us at a level that they're just simply not used to engaging.
Yeah. Well, speaking of steering things your way, whenever you work with a chef to develop a product, either exclusively for them or something that's coming on brand new, you're the guy, and you don't have to wonder about, am I cheaper than somebody else? Because you're now setting the price that you need, right, not based off whatever's on some damn piece of paper from a distributor.
Right. Yeah, and there's something to be said about having that level of control. They have no idea what they should be paying for it, and we, by and large, charge fair prices. We don't gouge people, and there's certain products that we grow we could charge a lot more money for. But we choose not to do that because at the end of the day, it's not the right thing to do for the relationship between us and the customer.
You've always been long-term.
Well, you have to be. You know, they have short memories. And also there's a lot of turnover in restaurants. If you're known as, well, he's just a high-cost provider, but they don't see the underlying value there, The second a new chef comes in, you don't have a relationship with them, they may no longer be a customer of yours. And so you need to build that long-term value where they see you as bringing more to the table than what you're taking. And I think a lot of people, when you can control the price point and you have exclusivity on a certain product, I think a lot of people take slight advantage of that, and usually to their long-term detriment, because number one, as soon as they take that item off the menu, you don't have any demand for that. So you have to go generate demand. And if you get too greedy with the price point because you found one customer that's willing to pay that price, now all of a sudden you're trying to go out and beg other people to buy this product that you've really perfected by now at a price point that they're just simply not willing to pay. And so you need to be cognizant of what the market will actually bear for something, even if you have one customer who's willing to pay an exorbitant amount for a particular product. I think it's very easy just to say, we're going to charge a ton, we're going to make so much money off of this, our profit margins are going to be off the charts. But you're losing sight of, well, if you're going to put the time and the effort into learning how to grow that actual crop, maybe you should make it a crop that you can sell for a while and really get that investment back. And so that's the way that we usually approach it. If we're going to invest months in learning a new crop and researching how it does best, we want that to be a crop that's profitable, not only to the first customer that gets it, but it's profitable in the long term. And I think if you just look at it we're going to get a really good price point from this one customer, you're not setting yourself up for long-term success with something that you invested a substantial amount of time and effort into. And that's something that as you scale a business like ours, becomes more difficult because you're trying to now please a lot more customers, and the scale at which you have to grow a specific plant increases. And while that may sound simple, it gets more complex. All of a sudden you have 20 customers that want a complicated plant. It's really easy to grow a complicated plant for 2 customers. Yeah. It's very hard to grow it for 20.
It seems like with your farm, you're in a constant state of scale up a little bit, optimize, scale up a little bit, optimize. And, we kind of go through the same thing where if you just keep scaling without optimizing, those little problems become big problems.
Exactly.
And I can see that getting way out of control with what you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, and I tell my team all the time that if we don't focus on the little problems that we have right now, it's going to be really hard to fix them in the future. And so let's think about how this thing that may seem small and insignificant would impact us in 6 months. Let's work on it now. Let's fix it now. So that way in 6 months, when the demand is 3 times, we're ready for that. And we're not trying to handle it then when the revenue that's at stake is that much higher. So the loss is that much more. Exactly. Yeah. New things are always going to come up. So deal with things when they seem small and insignificant, because they only get exacerbated at scale. And ultimately you stand to lose a lot more with a problem at scale than when you're just learning a crop. Like right now, when we're just starting to learn a crop, we don't lose anything because we're not currently selling it. Once you start to sell that crop, if you don't have those little problems figured out, like your cycles and how often you need to introduce a fresh young batch of crops, all of a sudden you stand to lose a lot more. You're losing thousands of dollars a week because you didn't prepare for that when it wasn't that detrimental to your top line revenue. And I think that's very easy to do because you just kind of lose sight of it.
So recently you've gone through a pretty major renovation, and I think this is going to tie in with what Nathan's going through right now. It's like you're optimized, you're at scale, you're selling everything you could possibly grow, and then in the middle of that you've had to shut down a section of your farm for a rebuild and a reboot, which means even less product to sell with more than likely even higher demand at that particular time. So how did you wrap yourself and your team up to be like, this is going to hurt and it's going to really hurt and be frustrating. It's going to be stressful. People are going to be calling, but it's for the greater good. So walk people through that process of sometimes you got to put the brakes on in order to get over the next hill.
I mean, short-term pain for long-term gain really is where it comes down to. You have to be willing to walk through those moments where you feel you could be growing a lot more, you feel like you could be selling a lot more, but you have to understand that sometimes you need to take the time to be prepared to sell a lot more. And so when we made the decisions to go through some configuration changes, we looked at it as, okay, over the long term, where do we want to be in 6 months? And what are the changes we need to be making now to get there in 6 months? And by and large, they were relatively easy decisions to make. It was just a matter of, we sat down as a team and we discussed what we wanted to do in terms of our crop mix and how we needed to get there. But at the end of the day, we had to look at it through the lens of, what are we sacrificing to get to that point? And we knew that if we were going to actually hit the revenue targets that we had for 6 months down the road, we had to make these shifts. And so you take systems out of production, you reconfigure the system, you get them back up as fast as you can, and then you get that process going. Once we know we need to do something, we don't waste time on doing it. We usually move very quickly once we've made a decision. Yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. Okay, then let's move forward with it. There's no need to sit there and analyze it to death. And I think that's very easy to do when you have a rapidly growing business, is you sit there and you just analyze, what could happen? Well, who cares what could happen?
You're spending 2 or 3 weeks looking at a single part that costs 60 cents versus 80 cents.
Buy 3 of them.
Get it over with.
And return the ones that don't work. Just move forward, and don't get yourself so stuck to where your lack of an ability to just make it a definitive decision actually hurts your company more than making the wrong decision, figuring out it was wrong, and then moving forward. And I think that a lot of people, when you're growing really fast, it can be very easy to be worried about what could happen. And I think that causes people issues, because if you're constantly worried about what could happen, you're not focused on not what is happening. And then you're losing sight of, well, what could actually happen from a positive standpoint. And shouldn't we be trying to get towards that faster, as opposed to being worried about, what happens?
All these what ifs that you have no control over.
Exactly. You just need to understand that you have to find an acceptable level of risk, right? You have to understand that if you're going to grow a business at a rapid scale, you have to be willing to accept some risk in the process, because if you don't take any chances, you're not going to grow fast. It's plain and simple. You have to be willing to take risks, take chances, and then if it fails, it fails. Be okay with that. Understand why it failed, learn from it, move on. But if you sit there and you're just constantly afraid of failure, you might as well shut your business down, honestly, because you're not gonna be successful if you're living in a fear of failure from a business standpoint. It's just not how it works. You have to be willing to accept things are going to go wrong, learn from it, and move on. And I don't think any of us really have this figured out.
No.
We're learning every day. We're constantly learning about how we can do things better. It's like what Brandon was saying earlier. I know I'm not the best at anything.
And that's why we do this every few months.
You find people that are better than you to get in a room and talk about these things, and you learn as you go, and you realize, oh my God, what the hell was I doing over the last 3 months? Man, there's such an easy solution. I didn't know it because I didn't talk to the person that knew better. But I'm okay.
Water the plants.
Yeah. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not knowing. I'm also okay with taking the risk.
I've also found comfort here recently in our little group in particular, because we all know each other's quirks and where we all struggle. And so I think it gives us, as our own little community here, an opportunity to go, all right, I know I'm going to pick on Jeff because he's not in this conversation, but I know Jeff has this particular challenge constantly. So we all kind of push him a little bit, and you always give me hell about certain things, and that camaraderie and that being aware enough and caring enough about each other helps us give the right decision, even though it's like a painful pill to swallow, or that person's really struggling with making that change. I think it's really opened up a lot of opportunity for us to really help people struggle over some of the biggest hurdles, which oftentimes is just in our own head.
And it can remove a lot of the fear of failure, coming here and talking to each other about how we have or haven't failed. Because
we've all failed in different ways.
Yeah. You can see that you're not alone.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and pull that up a little closer to him now. And Josh, so what I'm going to do at the end of this is I'm going to ask things that you've seen Nature Nate go to 60 million. What did you hear them talk about that, you could...
That would be great.
Talk on. So I was doing some quick math in my head. The last time we were all together was 6 months ago, and you two and Jeff sat down and talked about the design on the farm. That's not quite here just yet. No surprise there, because it's been rather wet over here and slows everything down. But you're fixing to go from where you're at, scaling up 8 times the size.
Correct.
So where Ryan is kind of scaled up a little bit, scaled up and optimize, we talked about you're not going to fully build out that full space just yet, that you're going to allow that to grow with you, but you're laying down that foundation to grow as you scale. And you do need to scale up quite a bit right now, but what's it look like for you to know you're moving into this space and to make the right decisions moving forward to grow with your clientele?
So it's been a wild ride for us so far. We over the last 6 months, we fully embraced the plan that we created to build this certain size grow room that is 8 times our current size, and we redid our engineering plans, we redid our architecture plans, spent quite a lot of money, hired a new contractor, and we actually just got a quote from him recently, and it's way over what we expected. So we're kind of back at the drawing board a little bit. We're probably going to have to reduce the size of the grow room to some extent to be able to afford it. But there's other avenues we could still, look through getting funding through alternate means. But it's out of our reach at this point in time. We are 100% full in our grow room. We are expanding into a new portion of our property, though. It's probably say about 800 or 900 square feet. So it's quite a bit bigger than where we are currently. And we'll just have to optimize it the best we can. And that'll allow us to continue to scale our business while we figure out how we're going to build on our property. But as to your question, we planned to, there's going to be six movable racks in the grow room, and each one of those movable racks will have 4 individual racks on it. And so we planned on just doing one at a time and then just slowly filling up the room as we went across. And that would give us the time to make sure that we weren't taking on a whole bunch of debt at once, buying all these racks where we don't have customers for them. We've been buying, our bootstrap racks, trays. We have so many more than we need right now, but we're preparing for when we do need them.
Sometimes you buy things when you can buy them.
Yes.
So you have them.
Yes. Absolutely. Whenever there's excess money in the account, we are investing it into back into the business.
Can you give us an example of when, let's say, a chef or a bartender has scaled with you? Is like they started out real small, then the orders got bigger, maybe they added a second restaurant. What's it look like from the other non-farming side of it, as kind of like what we were talking about with Ryan, they're coming to you and asking for development. But what's it look like from their side? There's got to be the same degree of trepidation and things that they worry about. What are they worried about as they scale up? And I'm talking about chefs in particular.
So you're asking me from their point of view, what's it like taking on new products or creating a whole nother restaurant, or maybe a different, like maybe a way off the reservation kind of menu? We spend a lot of time cultivating our relationships with our chefs. Whenever we get a new client, I spend ungodly amounts of time there. I go week after week after week whenever I know that I've got them on the hook, basically. And whenever I basically just need to get them on one product, and then from there I can start to grow that relationship from within. And every time I deliver, I bring additional things. I never just bring what they order. I bring them stuff to try. I study their menus.
Play with.
Yeah, I study their menus extensively, and I'm like, you should really check out this new variety of whatever that I have. It would be really good on this dish. Tell me what you think. And then they're like, well, actually, I'm creating my menu for next month, and I think it would be really good on this dish. And it's a give and take collaborative effort. But I think that they really enjoy having that relationship where they feel like they're a part of, like it's being created just for them. You spoke about this a lot. And I agree with everything that you said. It's really interesting that they are driving what we're growing instead of them just being given a list of things to choose from. I think that's a huge part of where this industry is going, farm to table, farm to kitchen, or whatever you want to call it.
Another factor of scaling up is bringing on additional labor, which I know you've done here recently. How's that? How many people did you bring on, and how's that gone?
So I've had Jana with me from the beginning, pretty close to the beginning anyways. Right after the conference in New York, we hired 2 new employees, Dylan and Clarissa. And Dylan does most of the planting, and Clarissa does most of the grow room maintenance. She keeps trays washed, keeps everything watered. She helps me with harvesting. But it's gone really well. They both, they love, being in the grow room. They love the energy, and they've made lots of mistakes. I had to do lots of rearranging of trays, things not getting labeled. But, then it goes full circle, right? So we switched them at one point so that now Clarissa's planting and Dylan's in the grow room. And they are finding each other's mistakes. Like when Dylan doesn't label a tray, well, now when Dylan gets a tray that doesn't have a label on it, he realizes why it's important to have a label on the tray. So it's been great for me too, letting go of some of those processes and being willing to let them, to do it. And I'm learning from them as well. They're coming up with their own techniques on how to plant and how to, harvest. And it's good for all of us.
And there's also a time investment in order to train somebody like that. And it's, part of scaling is investing time back into your people and into your systems. Did you ever feel like, well, I know when we spoke a couple of times, you were like putting in some very, very long hours at the time. Mm-hmm. As they needed help in training, how did you frame that up as far as this is what it's going to take to get this company to the next, and maybe at the same time writing some SOP so the next time you have to do this, it's not such a hit?
There was a lot of tasks that needed to be completed that seemed second nature to me. So we ended up creating some task lists that they can look through. We went into full detail about how to complete each one and what was expected of them. But we also let them know that they're basically, as long as they stay with the company and grow with the company, they're going to become our managers that are going to be training people in the future. And it's, their job to learn as much as they can from us and to ask any questions. Nothing, obviously is a stupid question, but be able to teach it to somebody else is the goal. Be able to overlook and have a full understanding of your part in this company. And, I'm always encouraging them to come to me with new species, new ideas, data that they want to take, experiments that they want to do. If there's anything that pops in their head, I'm all about expanding what we're able to do.
As you've listened to, very briefly, there's so much more we could talk about, but as you listen to how they've been expanding this year, and you've peripherally been aware of their ongoing activities for the last couple of years, looking back under the lens of a company going so big like Nature Nate's, is there anything that you can ask them to look out for, before going on to the next gigantic leap? These are all very calculated incremental steps from the both of you, but what happens when something big happens, and big and positive,
Yeah. I think that, one thing that Nature Nate's did really, really well from the beginning was communicated their value. So for honey at the time, there was this this problem with imported honey, right? So like it could be diluted with something, it could be, contaminated with corn syrup or some other adulterated some other way. And so Nature Nate's really pioneered the whole vision of raw and unfiltered honey. And I think that probably one of the things that Nathan did the best was tell that story and communicate that value early on from the beginning. And he built a brand around that value. And then as he scaled it, it was kind of a snowballing effect, right? So it's like once you, I know you guys sell to restaurants, but it's similar. Like at a lot of those high-end restaurants, especially hotels, you have somebody, it's normally a chef who's, making the purchase decision. For a brick and mortar retailer, for a store, it's the same way, right? So you have like a buyer. And so once you get a couple buyers under your belt, everybody, it's very similar. It's like everybody wants that product. It's like, man, okay, that product's selling really well at Albertsons.
Because there's people going into other stores.
Yeah.
And, they have this. Oh, now I see it in another store. We got to get it too.
Exactly. It's the same thing in the chef space, right? In the restaurant world. So, I think that would be the one thing that I feel like you guys are already doing, and from what it sounds like, really well. So just keep doing it, but it's just communicating about it. It's like why, and like what you were saying, which is awesome, which is I know is what Jeff, he believes the same thing, but it's like, how can we give you guys more value than what you're giving us, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's probably
what it looked like from an infrastructure standpoint.
Sure.
I imagine at one point there's out of a garage and then a building and then a bigger building and then, oh shit, all kinds of stuff going on. So as he's scaling up 8 times the size, what are some things you'd like for him to take a step back and get a big world view of?
Yeah. I think, vision's definitely one of them. For Nature Nate's, it was, honey, you have to buy the honey from a beekeeper, right? And so like it's really hard to beekeep and to also blend and bottle your own honey at the same time. It's too many touches. And so what Nature Nate's did really well is they figured out the system to buying the honey, blending it and packaging it, branding it in the right way, and then selling it. So they could easily focused on, the beekeeping side, and it would have distracted them from understanding what was really important. And that was, giving a high quality, good tasting, consistent blend of raw honey. And so I don't know. I was trying to think like how that kind of transcends into microgreens or herbs or whatever.
Well, some of the conversations we've had today is we've discussed packaging, we've discussed new varieties, and you guys understanding the fact that packaging is a huge issue, both from the farmer's standpoint, ecological standpoint, and it's just not a matter of going and getting another container. I think you brought up the fact that these containers that we're currently using are optimized to fit within the restaurant refrigeration space.
Yeah.
So you really do have to almost reinvent this wheel if we're going to tackle the problem of how do we get plastic out of the restaurant or plastic out of our shipments. So if Nature Nate is coming to this and, what's the root problem? It's actually work. It's having the beekeepers take their raw unfiltered honey and getting it in the package at the right place at the right price. And there's all these steps in between, and that's, again, we're here together trying to figure all this stuff out. What are some of these steps where you don't have to reinvent that wheel and you don't have to reinvent that wheel and Jeff doesn't have to reinvent that packaging wheel? That's just, I think it's a good opportunity where all that packaging in the honey is now under one bottle. How come we can't do the same thing by working together and saying, this is what my chefs are saying in Houston, this is what my chefs are saying in DC, and this is what it looks like from a manufacturing standpoint. There's a lot of considerations that I think if everybody puts their input into, you got a quality product and something that's better for the environment. Yeah,
and also systems, right? So it's like, what system, are you implementing that he's not implementing? Or like, how can you build off of that? And even like, we were talking earlier about like invoicing. It's like, how are you doing your ACH payments? Is there a better way? How are you, so it's just, I think something like this is so unique and so valuable because of that. It's like it really is a think tank, or it is coming together, brainstorming an idea, figuring out the best solution. And everybody's like, oh, well, yeah, duh, that does sound like 10 times better than what I'm doing, you know? So,
but there's 100 different ways to skin that cat, and who's to say which is right or which is wrong? But man, whenever you have 10 examples in one room, it just really makes a difference.
oh, absolutely.
One thing I was thinking about while you were talking is like, I think we're all just trying to build a reputation, and that's like start to finish in the whole experience. Like every business is an experience upon itself, like the Fresh Impact. When you walk into a restaurant, you're defining who you are and what you expect from them in the same way, you know, it's a relationship. So just, you know, being that person that they know they can ask you, you're building a reputation that you're that guy. And when you do that, especially when you're a premium product, we have to make sure we see that all the way through, including the invoicing, you know, all the little things, like all of those little loose ends have to be tied up, because if you're a premium product, any bit of inconsistency in that experience gets noticed, and that's all they think about then. And then you're really you're back in the mess of the field. So I think it's just as we scale up, we have to make sure that the experience doesn't change and it only improves. And we have to protect our reputations the most, because that's what branding is. At the end of the day, it's your reputation. And I think that's what helped Nature Nate's. Like he started a movement. He got, you know, he figured it out, and then it was the reputation and the trust that was built over time, which is allowed for that snowball to take effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think trust is huge when it comes. I mean, for Nathan, I mean, if he wanted to cut a corner and adulterate the honey with something, which is what a lot of honey companies do, right? I mean, it's not hard to be dishonest in that space, you know. But the first time you get caught, like the first time you do something dishonest and you're not authentic anymore, I mean, that just completely ruins your brand.
Or just being fair, like Ryan not overcharging for things that he probably could have and sometimes probably should have done. But in the long run, in the long, I'm working with this chef. We're a partnership. We're a team. He needs you. You need him. You know, it's just the right thing to do. So,
well, it's like what Brandon said. It's harder to maintain the highest level of quality and scale. It gets harder and harder and harder because you have more people involved, more eyes, more hands. So maintaining quality as you scale is one of the biggest challenges in any industry. I don't care what you do. Maintaining quality as you scale is one of the biggest challenges you're going to face. And so how do we work through that? And how do we take, you know, a brain trust like this and think through how to maintain levels of quality that are much easier to maintain when you're at a small scale and you have 2 or 3 people. Well, what happens when you have 30 people and you have 20 people harvesting as opposed to 2 people harvesting? How do you maintain the exact same level of quality? Because like you said, that's your reputation. And once you lose that reputation as being the premium member of the market, you might as well sell through a distributor and try to win on price, because you no longer can command the price point that your business was set up.
I think that takes you back to what he was talking about, sharing your vision with your employees and having everybody on the same page, because as long as they care about your business as much as you do, then they're going to take care of your product.
100%. It still gets harder.
Oh, no, I agree.
People,
I'm agreeing with you.
They need to understand and buy into it.
Combat
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And as part of that shared vision, if you're building systems and they know where you're headed, they're building systems designed to scale. Mm-hmm. Like you could have great systems, but if they can't scale, you got to reinvent the wheel at the worst possible time.
Every single time, too.
Right.
It's like every time you reach that next stage, it's like all of your systems don't work anymore. Yeah. And so figuring out what scaling means for you and then how to build that system as early as you can, you know, but I'm sure that never actually happens, and you continually have to recreate your system.
That's why the vision is so important. The more clarity you can have on that, the easier everything becomes, because you know exactly what to do. Mm-hmm. And so it gets back to goal setting. If you know what the long-term goals are, you back them in month by month, and you back them in day by day, and all of a sudden everything becomes easy because you're not reinventing the wheel every single day.
And that's why these are so important, because we're able to express our vision and then hear other people's and then incorporate that into how we're scaling.
Mm-hmm. But
to make sure that we're taking into account all variables.
And it's kind of like what Josh was saying about how Nature Nate did that culture. If my wife wouldn't be so cool about me being here, if your employees weren't taking care of everything while you were gone, you wouldn't have the opportunity to come and do this anyway. But if somebody else is out there, even taking that time for yourself to work through these things, or to, write us a letter or a DM and ask a specific question. You have to show up, and you have to do it on your own. So
perfect example. I got a text message this morning with a picture of a box of marigolds, and they said they look fine, but they don't look perfect like normally. Are you okay if we charge 50% off? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And that said so much about the fact that they get it. They understand that the reputation's there, and we're not going to send something in and claim that it's going to be at the quality that they're used to, and we're going to acknowledge it right off the bat and make sure they know, we know that this isn't the level, and we're going to make sure that you understand that it's not acceptable. And had they
not been able to get a hold of you, and had they made that decision to go ahead and charge 50% less, they know that you're not going to come home and kick a chair across the room.
Because they know.
They'd be much more angry if they charged full price.
And I get a text from a chef saying, "What is this?
Yeah.
Why was this delivered to me today?" Yeah, absolutely. And
we did the same thing with popcorn last week. It pushed my lid off my dark dome, and so they turned slightly green. And so about half of them were green and half of them were yellow, and we gave them half off.
Yeah,
the exact same situation.
Yeah. It's getting people to buy in, and it's making sure that they understand, do the right thing. Understand to do the right thing, and we're not going to be mad about it, but be willing to do the right thing.
Cool. We're going to wrap this one up. A continual thank you for everybody to being so open and for showing up and sharing your stories. It's good to finally get you on the mic, sir. Thank you. And I'll do more before the weekend is up. Other than that, we're out.
That's a wrap.